so much of our struggle with decision making isn't about lack of opportunity, it's about too much noise. Every day we're bombarded with voices, media, opinions, pressure, fears, distractions, all demanding our attention. And in the middle of all that noise, it becomes nearly impossible to hear the gentle whisper of divine direction. It's not that the guidance isn't there, it's that we're too occupied to notice it. The truth is, divine guidance is never in competition with chaos. It doesn't raise its voice to fight for attention. It waits for a willing heart, a heart that says, I want your way more than I want the world's validation. That kind of posture, that quiet inner leaning, is what creates space for clarity to flow. When our minds are cluttered and our hearts are overwhelmed, the guidance we seek gets drowned out. That's why intentional quietness is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. In a world of constant scrolls and endless alerts, sometimes the most spiritual thing we can do is turn it all off. Put the phone down, step away from the noise, not out of discipline alone, but because we crave something deeper, something truer. We crave truth that doesn't change with trends. We crave wisdom that's timeless. We crave guidance that doesn't fail. And that kind of wisdom doesn't shout. It speaks in the quiet. It speaks in stillness. Sometimes it's a nudge. Don't send that message. Sometimes it's a pause, wait before making that decision. Other times, it's peace that fills the heart when everything around screams worry. But we can't perceive that unless we create room for it. This sensitivity, this awareness of guidance, it's like tuning into a frequency. The station has always been broadcasting, but are we dialed in? Are we even close to the right frequency? Or are we too busy switching channels, trying to get the clearest message from the loudest source? That's the beauty of walking in divine rhythm. The more we quiet the external, the sharper the internal becomes. You start noticing patterns. You sense when something's off, even if it looks right on paper. You feel confirmation in your spirit, even if logic says it's a risk. That's not coincidence. That's divine clarity growing in response to your stillness. And here's something powerful. Once you begin living like that, you realize that being led isn't about dramatic moments. It's about daily awareness. It's in the little things, what route to take, who to call, what to say or not say. Decisions that might seem small, but carry weight in the bigger picture. And when we become faithful in listening to that guidance in small matters, we're entrusted with clarity in bigger ones. You might be facing a situation right now where you're not sure what to do. Maybe the opinions around you are pulling in 10 directions. Maybe fear is fogging your ability to choose, but there's a better way. There's a stillness you can enter. A quiet space where the only voice that matters begins to speak with clarity. But you must be willing to silence everything else. Sensitivity to that voice doesn't come from effort, it comes from alignment, and alignment begins in stillness. Make room in your mornings, even if it's 5 minutes. Pause before making key decisions. Learn to discern peace. And most importantly, trust that you're not alone in the process. Wisdom isn't far, it's already within you, waiting for your attention. Because in the quiet, everything becomes clearer. There's something powerful that happens when we wake up each day and say, not my will, but yours. That one simple surrender, daily, deliberate, opens the door to a kind of clarity the world can't give. Because let's be honest, life is full of choices. Some are easy, but others, they weigh on us. They pull at our emotions, our logic, our past experiences. And in those moments, trying to figure it all out with our own understanding feels like walking through fog. But when we surrender, when we stop trying to control every outcome and invite divine wisdom in, the fog starts to lift. It's not about giving up responsibility. Surrender doesn't mean passivity, it means partnership. It means choosing not to lean on our own limited view, but instead trusting that there's a greater perspective, one that sees beyond what we can see. And when we live from that posture of surrender, decision making no longer feels like guesswork. It becomes guided, steady, anchored in something deeper than circumstances. Think about how many times we wrestle with uncertainty. We make pro-con lists, we talk to people, we overanalyze. We even pray, but we often hold on to control while we pray. That's the difference. Surrender doesn't say, "Tell me what to do, and I'll decide if I like it." Surrender says, "Whatever you say, I'll follow." That's where the clarity comes in. Not before the surrender, but after. This daily surrender becomes a filter. It quiets the distractions. It silences fear. It tunes out pressure. When we begin each day aligning our heart, mind, and will with divine direction, something shifts. We begin to think differently. We start recognizing when a decision doesn't sit right. We feel peace when it does. That peace, that's not just a feeling, it's confirmation. It's the result of a surrendered heart being led by perfect wisdom. And it's not always about hearing an answer immediately. Sometimes clarity doesn't come in the form of a yes or no. Sometimes it's a not yet. Sometimes it's a nudge to wait, to slow down, to not rush just because everything around us says hurry. Surrender gives us the patience to wait for the right moment, and when the time is right, there will be no confusion, just a deep knowing, a divine assurance that this is the way, walk in it. Some of the best decisions we'll ever make come from a place of surrender. Not because we figured it all out, but because we trusted the one who already has, and that trust grows every time we surrender again. It's a daily rhythm, not once, not occasionally, daily, because each day brings new decisions, new challenges, new uncertainties. And each day we have the same opportunity to lay down our limited view and invite in limitless wisdom. People often say, "I just don't know what to do." And that's okay. You don't always have to know. You just have to be willing to let go. Let go of the pressure to always have the answer. Let go of the fear of making the wrong move. Let go of the need to control every outcome. Surrender makes room for clarity, not forced clarity, flowing clarity. That deep sense of direction that comes not from effort, but from alignment. And here's the beautiful part. As we walk in that daily surrender, we start recognizing divine fingerprints all over our decisions. We see doors open we didn't knock on. We see peace in paths that once caused anxiety. We notice growth in areas we once struggled. That's not coincidence, that's what happens when we live led. If you want real clarity, the kind that doesn't fade with emotion or crumble under pressure, you have to start with surrender. Every day, before the noise, before the pressure, before the world tells you what to do, surrender. That's where wisdom lives. So often, we look for signs, clear, dramatic confirmations to help us know what decision to make. We want something we can see, touch, analyze, but divine guidance doesn't always show up that way. More often than not, it reveals itself through peace. Not just any peace, not surface, level calm or the kind that depends on everything going right. I'm talking about deep, soul-level peace. A stillness that settles you even when circumstances are loud. A quiet assurance that speaks louder than logic ever could. That peace is one of the clearest confirmations we can receive. It's not always loud. It doesn't always make sense. But when it shows up, it may not answer all your questions, but it brings a confidence that moves you forward without fear. That's how divine guidance works, not by making every detail visible in advance, but by placing peace where you're supposed to step. We've all had those moments where everything looks perfect on paper. The opportunity checks all the boxes. The path seems smooth, and yet something inside doesn't feel right. It's not anxiety, it's not fear, it's just a lack of peace. A quiet resistance. That's the kind of moment we're tempted to push through, to reason it out, to say, maybe I'm just overthinking. But often, that lack of peace is a sign not to move, not to act, not yet. And if we learn to pay attention to it, it can protect us from making costly decisions. On the other hand, sometimes the path in front of us looks uncertain. It doesn't make total sense. The numbers don't add up, the timing isn't ideal, and the opinions around us raise concerns. And yet we feel peace. That kind of peace isn't natural, it's not emotional, it's spiritual. It's a sign that divine guidance is leading, even if everything else says otherwise. You see, peace is not the absence of difficulty. It's the presence of alignment. You can be in the middle of chaos and still be at peace because you know you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And that kind of peace doesn't come from us. We can't force it. We can't create it through planning or positive thinking. It comes when we're aligned, when we've quieted the noise, surrendered the outcome, and said yes to being led, even before we see the full picture. This is why it's so important not to rush decisions, because peace doesn't always speak immediately. Sometimes it takes stillness and patience for peace to rise, and if we move too fast, we risk missing it. But when we slow down, when we lean in, peace becomes the compass, and that compass is faithful. It doesn't always give you the destination, but it always points in the right direction. And I know sometimes we wrestle with wondering if what we're feeling is really peace or just what we want to feel. But here's how you know the difference. Real peace doesn't need to be propped up by perfect circumstances. It doesn't need constant reassurance. It just is asterisk. Even when things don't make sense, even when the outcome is uncertain, peace holds steady. It's calm in the chaos, and when you have that kind of peace, you don't need 100 confirmations. One is enough. There's something powerful about learning to let peace lead. It teaches you to trust. It anchors you, and over time, it becomes a rhythm. You start making decisions not based on pressure or logic or other people's expectations, but on inner alignment. And that's when clarity flows. That's when direction becomes more than guesswork. It becomes guidance. So if you're in the middle of a decision right now, if you're unsure which way to go, don't just look at the facts. Don't just weigh the opinions. Ask yourself, where is the peace? Because that's where the guidance is. That's where your next step waits. We often think the big breakthroughs in life come from the big moments, those dramatic, mountain-moving decisions that shift everything overnight. But more often, it's not the grand choices that carry the most weight. It's the small ones, the quiet ones, the ones no one sees. Because the truth is, the way we respond to small nudges shapes the doors that open to greater things. There's a reason we're sometimes prompted to do something that seems insignificant. Maybe it's a feeling to reach out to someone, a quiet urge to stop and pray, a tug in your heart not to go somewhere or to take a different route. These moments might seem random, even unnecessary, but they're not. They're tests. Not tests to trap us, but invitations, opportunities to train our spirit, to sharpen our sensitivity, to build the kind of trust that can carry weight when the bigger decisions come. Think of it like this. If we're not tuned in enough to respond to the small whispers, how can we expect to hear clearly when the stakes are higher? Every small act of obedience is like a step forward on a path that leads to something greater, and with each step we become more aligned, more anchored, more confident not in ourselves but in the one guiding us. Sometimes the biggest shifts in our lives come after we respond to what seemed like the smallest instruction. And often we don't see the full picture until we look back. We realize that conversation changed everything, or that moment of hesitation saved me from making a mistake. But it only happens when we listen, when we obey, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it doesn't make sense. There's a kind of clarity that comes from consistent obedience, not blind obedience, but trust-based obedience. And it builds like a muscle. The more we respond, the stronger our discernment grows. We start to recognize the difference between noise and direction. We feel it quicker, we act faster, not out of fear, but out of peace and confidence. And let me say, this obedience doesn't always lead to comfort. Sometimes it stretches us. Sometimes it costs us something. It may even make us look foolish in the eyes of others. But it always produces fruit, even when we don't see it right away, because every yes in the small things prepares us for the responsibility of the bigger things. We all want clarity in the major decisions, career changes, relationships, calling, direction. But clarity there doesn't come in isolation. It's built in the everyday moments of responsiveness. That's where we learn trust. That's where we learn how the voice sounds. That's where we prove, not to anyone else, but to ourselves, that we're ready for more. I think sometimes we're waiting for the clouds to part and a booming voice to tell us where to go. But guidance often looks like, give even when it's inconvenient, speak encouragement when you feel empty, hold your tongue when you want to defend yourself, wait when everything inside you wants to rush. These are the moments where obedience refines us, and those moments lead to breakthrough, not because they're dramatic, but because they are obedient. You don't need to have it all figured out to take the next step. You just need to be willing to say yes when it's hard, willing to follow when the path isn't clear, willing to trust even when there's no applause, no confirmation, no immediate reward. Because what happens in the unseen places is never wasted. Every act of obedience is a seed, and in the right season, it brings a harvest greater than you imagined. So don't underestimate the power of a small yes. That one moment of obedience might be the very thing that unlocks everything you've been praying for.